Hello everyone and welcome to A Slice of My Life. This is my review of the ktechs S2 Snow Tactile Switch. A big thank you goes out to TR of ktechs for putting these switches in my hand, and a special shout out to Dr. Strangehand for the introduction, and to mksg where it all happened. To start things off, I feel an immense need to tell you that these switches saved my LW67. But more about that later. Also, I'll have all the relevant links in the description, so feel free to check them out at any time. Let's run through the specs of the S2 Snow Tactiles. These are a 5-pin switch designed by ktechs and manufactured by thocc, and feature a milky HPE top housing, a white bottom housing made out of thocc's proprietary blend, as well as a white pom stem that features a super long pole. I'm not kidding about the long pole, they're 13.9mm long. These poles are so long that they bottom out slightly earlier than most switches. Not by much, but those who are more sensitive to these things will probably feel it. Personally, I'm a fan of long pole stems. I love that woody sound when you bottom out the switch, and also I don't feel a difference in the travel distance. The springs in the S2 Snow Tactiles are gold-plated double springs, also known as two-stage springs, with a 50-gram actuation and a 63.5-gram bottom-out force. They are also factory lubed with an oil-based lubricant. Honestly though, I must say that for my batch of switches, the factory lube is very thin, almost to the point that some visually look dry. The good thing is that I dare say it's rather consistent. Also, since it's oil-based, you won't get random globs of lube. The overall tactility of the S2 is also pretty good. It starts right at the top, but it's not as sharp as a Zelio V2 or a Boba U4T, so on lighter keystrokes, I found myself actuating past the bump but not bottoming out. The return is snappy as well, but not harsh. I'll have a sound comparison between stock S2 switches and lubed and filmed S2 switches later, but for now, I'd like to talk about stem wobble. To better illustrate the stem wobble of the S2 switches, I have a few other tactile switches for comparison. Take note that all of these switches are in stock form. As you can see, the S2 switches have very little vertical play, but have a bit of wiggle room in the horizontal axis. While they're not the tightest, overall, they're still pretty tight. Don't worry, they're nothing like drop halo trues. Sorry about that. Now let's move on to a sound comparison. The keyboard I'm using here is the Muso Creator, and the build specs will be on the screen. I picked this because I wanted a keyboard that could produce the most neutral or basic sound. I'll be using a number of stock tactile switches for the comparison, and now it's time to press F. Oh my god, that spring ping. Oh, it's so bad, I can't. Next up is a typing sound demo with the S2 Snow switches in 2 different keyboards in order to give you a better representation. Here we go. To be honest, I don't think there's much of a difference between the stock versus lubed and filmed S2 snows. If I was really pushing it, I'd say that the lubed and filmed S2s sounded just slightly lower pitched. The ktechs S2 snow switches are retailing at 90 cents per switch in the Singapore dollar currency, which is actually a pretty competitive and compelling price point. Again, I'll have links in the description to the ktechs web store so you can snag yourself some S2 snow tactile switches. Alright, time to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for sharing in this slice of my life. Once again, a big thank you goes out to TR of ktechs for blessing me with the opportunity to review the ktechs S2 snow switches and essentially feeding my craving for tactile switches. If you enjoyed this video, please clicky the likey. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell to be notified whenever I post new content. Of course, a huge shout out goes to the patrons of my Patreon page. You guys are awesome. Before I go, remember at the start of this video, I mentioned that the S2 snow switches saved my LW67? I've tried so many different configurations and switches in my LW67, but the results were always very lackluster. Until I popped the S2 snows in. With that said, I'll leave you with the before and after typing tests of my LW67, and I will catch all of you in my next slice. Bye!